After Reagan's election, there was an attempt on his life, just 69 days into office. Astoundingly, Bush would again be connected.
So just who is John Hinckley, Jr.?
When he left this neighborhood 8 years ago, he was, by all accounts, well-liked and seemingly normal.
This donut shop near the motel was visited by Hinckley, who reportedly waited for a phone call here each day, even though he had a phone in his motel room. The nature of the calls is not known. A touch of irony. The young man walking with the elder Hinckley is 30-year-old Scott Hinckley, John Jr.'s brother. He and Vice President Bush's son, Neil, are friends. They had planned to have dinner together in Denver tonight. The plans have been canceled.
We were told Hinckley was a madman acting alone. If that was the case, why was he making phone calls from a payphone down the road instead of his hotel room? Why was the would-be assassin's brother a family friend of the man who stood to gain the presidency? While Reagan led the nation in the public eye, Bush exploited his power through the largely unknown Continuity of Government Directive.
In the United States federal government, there is a super-secret agency which controls this shadow government.
The National Program Office allowed Bush and his network to attain executive emergency powers.
Ronald Reagan authorized the National Program Office when he signed a top-secret directive in 1982. Oliver North was one of the key officers responsible for the program's startup. Under the NPO's direction, 4 agencies were charged with execution of the Doomsday Plan: the CIA, the Departments of State and Defense, and the Federal Emergency Management Agency.
An effort was being made to consolidate continuity of government programs across several major departments of the government under one office.
After 8 years of secret wars, covertly sponsored revolution and assassination had advanced globalist interests and allowed Bush to achieve his lifelong dream by becoming the 43rd president of the United States. The fall of the Soviet Union left the United States as the sole superpower in the world. The Wolfowitz Doctrine stated, "We must maintain the mechanism for deterring potential competitors from even aspiring to a larger regional or global role." The New World Order was on display with the first Gulf War and the creation of a European Union. After losing to his crony Bill Clinton, he faded into the background as the agenda for a New World Order marched forward.
After 1989, President Bush said, and it's a phrase that I often use myself, that we needed a New World Order.
We have just exposed many of the globalist operations, including drug dealing, funding terror, dealing arms, and taking over the United States government by stealth. Whenever these agendas were threatened, those who opposed them ended up dead.
We've got some difficult days ahead, but it really doesn't matter with me now, because I've been to the mountaintop.
My thanks to all of you, and now it's on to Chicago, and let's win there. Thank you very much.
Gave a paper about all 3 of the big assassinations in the 60s, which was John F. Kennedy, Bobby Kennedy, and Martin Luther King. And there are certain common denominators. I call these events deep events. We've become accustomed to the idea that every now and then something is going to happen, and we just know from the beginning we're not going to get to the bottom of it. And the more they happen, the more reconciled we've become to this state of affairs.
In 1978, the House Select Committee on Assassinations could not ignore there was a conspiracy in regards to the assassination of John F. Kennedy and Martin Luther King, Jr.
Good evening. A congressional committee has concluded that President John Kennedy and civil rights leader Martin Luther King, Jr., both of them, were probably killed as the result of conspiracies. The House Assassinations Committee wound up its 2-year study by recommending that the Justice Department look into both cases.
In the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King, the committee concluded the likelihood of conspiracy. The committee's summary of findings says President Kennedy was probably assassinated as a result of a conspiracy, that its evidence establishes a high probability that 2 gunmen fired at the motorcade. The committee concluded that President Kennedy did not receive adequate Secret Service protection in Dallas, that the CIA was deficient in sharing information before and after, that the Justice Department and Warren Commission failed to pursue possible conspiracies and made their conclusions too definite.
There seems to be no debate that the CIA and Secret Service were involved in the assassination, as you can clearly see 2 Secret Service agents being taken away from their positions at the back of Kennedy's vehicle just moments before the assassination. And no matter what you believe about Oswald, it has now been declassified that Oswald was trained by the CIA in 1957 under the cover of the Office of Naval Intelligence. These political assassinations continue to this day.
The 11-person jury in the inquest must decide if these stills, never before seen of Diana in the Mercedes and then the crash, are the frantic moments after a tragic accident or the aftermath of a calculated murder.
Mr. Al-Fayed?
Mohammed Al-Fayed, Dodi's father, has long since made up his mind.
I believe that my son and Princess Diana been murdered by the royal family.
He claims Diana was pregnant and about to announce her engagement to his son, an embarrassment so great, he says, that Prince Philip commissioned British Secret Service to kill the couple.
Assassination is an option when the ruling class can identify an enemy who cannot be compromised. But how do they bend the population's will to do their bidding?
Well, the false flag operation is one in which the attacker carries the flag of someone else. It's usually a military operation, and the purpose, of course, is to create the impression that the attacker is someone else. They want to create negative public opinion against the nation whose flag was being used. Or they may even not use a flag at all. This sort of thing is done all the time, and it's certainly not unique in history. I think we've been seeing a lot of it lately. Americans are easily motivated by false flag operations, and I think it's inevitable that we will see false flag operations in the near future.
It is used in order to seize power at an accelerated pace. A very well-documented modern example of this is the Tonkin Gulf incident.
There were 2 sets of Tonkin Gulf incidents. The first one on August 2nd were real but trivial. The second on August 4th, 2 days later, were the ones to which we actually sent planes off in retaliation and were, in theory, much bigger, a torpedo attack on a U.S. destroyer. But in fact, it never happened.
When McNamara visited Vietnam, he confirmed the Tonkin Gulf incident never occurred, and once again, we were lied into war.
To this day, I don't know what happened on August 2nd and August 4th, 1964 in the Tonkin Gulf.
The general provided the answer, saying his Navy attacked the Maddox on August 2nd, but on the 4th, nothing happened. There was absolutely nothing, he said.
We know for a fact now that NSA and CIA both falsified their reports up to Johnson on that day to make it look as if there had been an attack.
Upon the fall of communism, a new threat had to be established in order to maintain their military-industrial complex and keep the people in fear of invisible enemies. More modern examples of this have been used not only to start conflicts abroad, but to instill fear in large populations in order to demonize groups and further erode civil liberties. The majority of people still believe that Timothy McVeigh was a right-wing extremist who bombed the Oklahoma City building with a Ryder truck because he was upset with the government. People close to the event told a very different story.
A local congressman believes that convicted bomber Timothy McVeigh and his accused co-conspirator Terry Nichols are not the only ones involved.
The Oklahoma State Representative Charles Key produced a videotape featuring witnesses who claim to have seen Timothy McVeigh with another man the morning of the bombing.
He was wearing a ball cap. Timothy McVeigh had his on backwards, which just like this. It was on his head. The other gentleman had his on like this.
In fact, the FBI had actively pursued John Doe No. 2 in its initial investigation, then denied his existence altogether. There were also multiple reports that explosives were found inside the Murrah building.
Now, the Justice Department is reporting that a second explosive device has been found in the AP Murrah building in downtown Oklahoma City. Mike, you're still with us, aren't you?
Yes, I am, and I might tell you in addition to that, in fact, what we were told at the scene a few minutes ago was that, in fact, 2 different explosive devices were found in addition to the one that went off.
The second explosive was found and diffused.
The third explosive that was found, and they are working on right now as we speak, I understand, both the second and third explosives, if you can imagine this, were larger than the first.
Bomb squads were actually caught on video pulling into the building to retrieve these devices.
They'll back that trailer down there, and the bomb squad folks will go in, and they will use that trailer. You see the bucket on the back there, sort of, this is how they would transport the explosive device away from this populated area to try to do something with it.
I just took a look down the street at the Morrow building again. I see another bomb truck going, so apparently they're going to try to get out that third bomb that's been talked about.